Retinoblastoma is a cancer of the eye that primarily affects children. It's not a common cancer, but medical experts consider the number of annual cases in Nigeria concerning. Unfortunately, effective treatment options have been limited, but the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, First Cardiology Consultants Hospital, and medical NGO, IDOC, have partnered to provide more advanced procedures for this cancer. Arise correspondent Leila Johnson-Salami reports.
The 21st century has seen a number of breakthroughs in the fight against cancer, but this disease remains one of the biggest killers, leading to almost 10 million deaths worldwide in 2020, according to the World Health Organization. Retinoblastoma is an eye cancer that's mainly seen in children. It's one of the rarer cancers today, but it's quite prevalent in Nigeria. Unfortunately, advanced treatment options haven't been available, with eye removal procedures common, leading to several children losing their sight. But that's changing as the University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, Medical Foundation IRDOC, and First Cardiology Consultants Hospital have partnered to provide the first intra-arterial chemotherapy procedures in the country. IAC is able to treat the cancer directly in the eye, making treatments more effective.
We see about 450 cases a year, which is quite common compared to most Western countries, so it's really an epidemic. It takes a lot of skill to be able to do interventional radiology, and now we're starting to have more people trained in interventional radiology. One person just came back from a program in Tanzania, so we're starting to have the human capital, right? And basically, human capital is basically being the main thing.
Through IRDOC, the cost of these first two procedures has been covered. IAC is rather expensive, with prices ranging from country to country, but costing thousands of dollars.
In America, an IAC treatment for each time you do it is about $22,000 to $25,000. Okay, so in Nigeria right now, we're costing the procedure for about $3,500. But that's night and day compared to America, but that's still very expensive for a Nigerian families. When the procedure has been made available in country, that's a big step, right? Because if you think about it, $3,500 is probably what it costs for the family to travel to America, right? For a mom and child to travel to America, to travel to India, to travel to all these countries. So we've already significantly reduced the cost for the family to get it done here. But again, I'm still not naive about the fact that it's still expensive.
One of the patients is just 18 months old. His mum said his symptoms started when he was 7 months old.
This is congenital cataract. They can be corrected at any time. But I was too bothered and worried. I decided to move to the state capital, that's Jalingo, where the ophthalmologist there at the FMC told us that it's retinoblastoma. But they can't treat it there because they don't have facility. My hope for Joseph is he will regain his sight. His vision will come back to both eyes.
Fortunately, both surgeries were successful. Ocular oncology specialist Professor Ido Didi Fabian, who came into Nigeria to join the team, is hopeful that this procedure can be done independently in the country going forward.
Historically, the main procedure was enucleation, removal of the eye. Then for many years, we used radiotherapy until the 1990s, and then we moved to intravenous, to systemic chemotherapy, which is still the mainstay of treatment across the world. Since the early 2000s, in different places across the world, in high-income countries mainly, we use IAC. It's more sophisticated, more complicated. The logistics, it's more expensive, but the efficacy is really great. So you can really save vision, eye, and life of a child using this treatment. This specific procedure is very high-tech, and it's done in most high-income countries, in North America, in Europe, in Israel. Only a few countries in Africa use it, and now we're glad to say that Nigeria can use IAC.
Healthcare in Nigeria is progressing particularly through the private sector. Procedures and treatments that were only available abroad just a decade ago are slowly becoming accessible. Dr. Ahmed Ninalowo moved back to Nigeria a few years ago, and now he's saving the lives of retinoblastoma patients through IAC. While the high number of medical professionals leaving Nigeria is a steep hurdle to overcome, stories like this offer a slight glimmer of hope for the advancements of healthcare in the country. Leila Johnson Salami, Arise News, Lagos.
And joining us now to discuss the first retinoblastoma eye cancer surgery in Nigeria, the prevention and the treatment of the disease in the country is interventional radiologist and the founder of our Doc Nigeria, Dr. Ahmed Ninalowo. Good to have you on Newsday, and thank you for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you for having me here.
First of all, we commend the work that you're doing. It's very interesting. We hear more of doctors jackpotting or leaving the country, not so much the reverse. But could you talk to us more about this eye disease and how it affects children and how it manifests itself? What are the symptoms and how parents can catch it early?
So interesting. So retinoblastoma is actually not that common.
Okay.
So for example, our partners that came from Israel, they only have about 20 cases of retinoblastoma a year in the entire country. In Nigeria, our population is a lot more, so we have about 400 to 450 cases a year of retinoblastoma. Obviously, as I said, it's not that common, so recognizing this disease is very important, especially for the young parents, because it happens to very young children. So leukorrhea, which is basically like a cat eye, where you see basically a white reflex in the eye, is one of the most common symptoms to see, where you just see a white speck in the back of the eye. And most parents will recognize that because they see their children a lot, and they look in the eyes of their babies a lot. One of the other symptoms is something called strabismus, which is what we call cross eye. But when that happens, it's already really late because the cancer is at a late stage. My ophthalmology colleagues, they're more placed to talk about the pathophysiology of the disease. I'm more placed to talk about the treatment in IAC.
Okay.
Okay, so can you tell us some of the challenges that you faced in carrying out these procedures, especially in terms of funding and logistics?
So, I do interventional radiology, which is basically we call it image-guided surgery, which means we don't cut people open. We find our way through the human body without having to cut people open. So we use X-rays to navigate. I specifically actually don't treat children. So that's one of the biggest challenges for me. I really run away from children because of the emotions involved in taking care of children. Children also have very small vessels. So we've been talking about doing this treatment for about 4 months, actually. I was approached by an ophthalmologist from the University of Ilorin, Dr. Popola, who's very, very passionate about retinoblastoma because she's the referral center for these cases in Nigeria. And she's seen a lot of these patients, and she's been only able to offer them intravenous chemotherapy. And if you think about it, intravenous chemotherapy, you're only really just injecting the chemotherapy in the veins, and you're hoping that enough concentration of that medicine gets into the eye, right? So now this high-tech treatment, which has been done in most Western countries since about 1998, has been available, but there's been no one in country that's been able to have the technical expertise to do the treatment. So this high-tech treatment, which is IAC, involves basically going into the artery in the groin and putting a very tiny catheter to go find the specific vessel that fits the eye, to put the medicine in there. And that significantly increases the concentration of the drug in the eye and also decreases systemic toxicity from chemotherapy. So what are the challenges of doing something like that? For the first challenge is human capital. A person like me who's an interventional radiologist, I'm an adult interventional radiologist, so I'm very comfortable with doing treatment in adults, but I'm not comfortable with children, which is why we partnered up with this team from Israel to come in to proctor us for the first cases, which were done obviously successfully. The other issue is cost. As I talked about earlier, these treatments are quite expensive in the US and European countries. It could cost about $25,000. The equipment and the consumables to do a treatment like this could cost upwards of about $3,000, right? And that's not affordable for a lot of Nigerian families. So one of the biggest hurdles, human capital and cost.
I know that speaking of the partnership in Ilorin, will you be partnering with any other hospitals in Nigeria to focus on this? Is the team that came, are they here on a permanent or is it a temporary basis? And also the eye cancer, is it something that is curable or is it just something you manage with treatment for life?
It is curable in some children. If it's caught early enough and you start treatment early enough, it could be curable. And the biggest deal, obviously, is preserving vision, right? And if a child cannot see, that could significantly change the course of that patient's life. As far as partnering with other centers, the way I've run my practice in Nigeria is basically to always try to partner with a center of excellence. Try to develop protocols and do things the same way over and over and over. For now, the main treatment center is the University of Ilorin, and that's our primary partner. We will continue to partner with them until we have another center that we think has the same capability of treating patients at the same level. Then we would probably expand that partnership.
So any side effects to this surgery, will they require any type of long-term care, after going through this?
Actually, interestingly, the patients that we treated went home the next day. They could go home pretty much about 6 hours after the procedure, but it's not a risk-free procedure. Remember, the vessels that feed the eye also feed the brain and also feed a lot of important structures there, which is why you need somebody that's very careful and understands the anatomy to get into those vessels, because you could cause a stroke in a child. You could do a treatment like this and the child walks in saying hi and they walk out basically with not being able to lift their arm. So, we do a lot of things to mitigate risk, but the important thing is having the technical expertise not to cause harm, only to do good when you do a treatment like this.
So would they require extra care?
Absolutely. So interestingly, it's not a one-time and done thing. So for these patients, we've treated them. They're going to go back to Dr. Popola at Ilorin in a month and do an ocular exam again and look at the effect of the treatment. And most patients need about 2 or 3 treatments in total of IAC.
And earlier, I was talking about the fact we don't hear a lot of doctors, Nigerian doctors coming back. Can you speak to us about your experiences? And, you've been in the U.S., I'm guessing, and now you're here. And is it, piggybacking off Tim Tokba's question as well, the challenges that you've seen and how you have been able to overcome them and maybe just encourage some other doctors to stick around for longer if they can?
So interestingly, a lot of my colleagues in America think I'm crazy for coming back. So I do have a little crazy in me. So my journey started earlier when I was in medical school, because I've always looked to come basically to provide medical care in Nigeria. I used to shadow people like Dr. Yemi Johnson, who was one of my mentors. And he always laughed at me. He always said, there's no way you're going to come practice in Nigeria. I also wanted to do something that was revolutionary, which is interventional radiology. There was no one practicing interventional radiology at this level in Nigeria. There was no one trained at this level to practice interventional radiology. And I look at our practice in America, and I see how much we contribute to patients' care. And think about a country of 200 million people not having one person that could provide that level of care for those patients, right? So I started my journey, I think, in 2018, where I would come to Nigeria about 1 week every 6 weeks to do procedures for 1 week. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And it just grew on me. It was like cocaine. I've never taken cocaine, but, I just got addicted to coming to Nigeria to taking care of my own people. And in 2019, I took the big leap forward, and my wife supported me significantly into moving back to Nigeria. And I reversed it, where I would spend 6 weeks here and 2 weeks in America. And then COVID happened, and I had to make a choice. Go back to America or stay here. And I decided to stay here. And, it was a very, very interesting time, because I learned to survive in Nigerian medicine. There's always a lot of challenges. One of the biggest challenges is the supply chain for us. Everything we use is pegged in dollars, right? So we have to import everything we use, either from South Africa, from America, or from Europe, right? So we produce nothing in this country when it comes to medical equipment and medical consumables. So that's one of the biggest challenges into making sure that we get that equipment in to do the work. And also for me, now I'm actually getting tired, because, I'm still flying back to America 1 week at a time, every 6 weeks now, to take care of my patients there, and then come back to Nigeria for 6 weeks to do my procedures. And the biggest deal for me now is creating human capital sustainability. and creating people like me so that more and more people like me could do these procedures. We started a fellowship program to encourage somebody to start doing these procedures. We started about six months ago. Our first trainee is now doing some procedures independently. When I was in America the last time, there was a patient who was sick and no one could take care of, but my fellow was able to do the case. And for me, that's a win. We're already winning. And I understand most of our young doctors want to leave the country. And you know, the honest truth is you really can't blame them, right? The environment that we practice here, the opportunities are just not there. And I would encourage most of the young ones that want to leave, you could leave, but always think about home. Think about what you could do to contribute to the medical capacity at home. Because really, we're going to get into a significant amount of trouble in Nigeria soon because there are just really no doctors left.
Well, I really wish I could continue this very interesting discussion, but we're out of time. Dr. Ahmed Ninalowo, interventional radiologist, founder IDOC Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on Newsday.
Thank you so much for having me.